In 1971, David Bowie released Hunky Dory, his fourth and, in this listener's opinion, one of his best albums. Well, top four for sure. By this time, he was already gaining a reputation as weird, strange, and ambiguous. But then, the early 70s were themselves a weird time. The 60s were over, the summer of love was long gone, the counterculture didn't really know what to do with itself, the Beatles had broken up, Elvis Presley was still singing in Las Vegas. New bands like Pink Floyd were experimenting with all sorts of things. Like drugs. Punk hadn't really started yet. Popular music seemed to be waiting for something new, something startling and unusual. Bowie saw an opportunity and seized it. It's difficult to characterize Hunky Dory. The songs range from the soaring heights of Life on Mars, to the cutesy romance of Kooks, to the troubling Nietzschean daydreams of a new human race in Oh, You Pretty Things. And the Bewley Brothers, the album's final track, is virtually impenetrable, with nonsensical lyrics that are meaningful only to Bowie himself, though they do appear to be very meaningful to him. The usual interpretation is that the song is about his brother, who was schizophrenic. Mental illness ran in the Jones family, and Bowie spent a lot of time actually worrying that he too eventually would succumb. But what holds Hunky Dory together is the sinewy, slithering sense of transformation and instability that runs throughout the whole thing. An energy of change, of transgression, of experimentation and foreshadowing of things to come. Bowie at the time cast himself as sexually ambiguous, androgynous, deviant. He was cross-dressing. He wore a dress on the cover of Hunky Dory, even though he was married with a young child. But the marriage was open? Probably very open. He had positioned himself on the edge, an inscrutable sign whose meaning was unclear. He was plastic, shapeless, and slowly but surely taking on the status of icon and saint for everyone who felt excluded, marginalized, left out of the mainstream because of who they were. British youth in the early 70s were looking for someone to symbolize them, symbolize their uncertainty, and Bowie fit the bill. Turn and face the strange, David Bowie sings on Hunky Dory's opening track, Changes. Just gonna have to be a different man. But the sort of strange changes Bowie faced, changes in who he was and what his music was, are not personal and private matters. As a singer and a performer, they are public. A metamorphosis performed in front of a live audience. But when you are in the public eye, when everyone is watching you, how real are these changes? How much of the change comes from inside you, from a personal need rooted in who you actually are? And how much of it comes from the outside pressure of others, of fans? How much is the product of fame or of the desire for fame? Bowie was never shy about his goals. He wanted to be famous. Fame was his goal, at least as a young man. But he was also self-aware enough to acknowledge that he was standing in a strange intersection of public and private. So I turned myself to face me, but I've never caught a glimpse of how the others must see the faker. I'm much too fast to take that test. He calls himself the faker. He's faking it. He's chasing fame. He's performing rather than being. Or at least that's how he appears to others. I'm much too fast to take that test, he sings. The changes and transformations are occurring too quickly to scrutinize. By the time the mirror of society sends back his own reflection, he has moved on to becoming someone else. But as the chorus declares, time may change me, but I can't trace time. Time and change are constant, but within the vortex, but within the vortex, but within the vortex, but within the vortex, but within that vortex, who is in charge? Is Bowie choosing who he will be, or is time? Bowie is becoming the plastic man, the man of many shapes and forms, sculpted and molded by himself, but also by others, by forces inside him and things outside, by things he can control, by things he can control, and things he cannot. Change is the one constant throughout his career. He had no really stable musical identity, no through-line style or genre, no fixed form. Turn and face the strange. He was always turning, always stranger. I suppose there was a sort of liberty in this. Honestly, it kind of sounds exhausting. On the other hand, that sort of energy is probably necessary when it comes to self-creation. You either relax and be what everyone thinks you should be, or you strain and you strive to be something else, to be something new, to be yourself. Turn and face the strange.